Everything was normal all up until the last period of the day.
Early in the morning, we had a fire drill. Seemed like any other day, other than it was Valentine's Day.
I was on the first floor of the freshman building in my math class, and that day we were taking a test.
I was standing in front of the class doing a lecture on Sigmund Freud and theories of personality.
I was like taking my Snapchat videos and just having fun with my friend Maddie and Morgan, who were next to me.
Are they chalky?
Yeah. Come out, flowers.
Maddie, are you trying to flirt with me?
Yeah.
Really? Which one?
DM me.
Really?
I was in my 4th period class, Miss Rioven's AP Psychology, excited about it was Valentine's Day, so we were all just kind of chit-chatting, and then we went inside.
Definitely need to have talk with you.
Yeah, you know, like...
I was teaching history of the Holocaust class. It was the last class of the day.
I remember I had my headphones in and just waiting for the next assignment to be announced.
I was on the 3rd floor of the freshman building, and we were just writing Valentine's Day cards.
Writing a letter to somebody we either really hate or love. Some people doing their significant other, mom, dad, dogs, stuff like that.
I have about 38 kids in there. It's very noisy and animated. Everybody's anxious to get out. It was about 2:20, and I know this because I'm always looking at the clock. Teachers always gauge their class by the time, and we had about 20 minutes left in class. School ends at 2:40.
There was a kid who saw him with the gun.
In the very beginning, right?
In the very beginning, before he started firing. The shooter told him to get out because it's going to get ugly. He was probably scared out of his mind. I can't blame him for that. He did go and make somebody aware of what he saw. It was just unfortunate that it was too late.
We were listening to music and just talking because we didn't have any more work to do. Usually whoever sits at the back of the room usually answers the door. I went to answer the door, so I paused my music. I stood up, and as I was standing up, I heard the gunshots. We heard the first gunshots, and I don't even remember. It was so quick. I was sitting in my desk one minute, and I was under my teacher's desk the next.
That must have terrorized your class.
Yes. At that point, we were all screaming, yelling, "No, lay down, this isn't a drill, this is real."
My classroom was the first classroom that was shot into. When the first shots were heard, I thought it was a drill, because something like this, it can't be real.
I remember everyone throwing themselves on the floor, crawling to wherever we felt the safest, behind the teacher's desk, to across the door, wherever.
When I saw my injured students, I realized that this was real.
He didn't get the chance to stand up from his seat. He just laid there, blood going everywhere, and no one really knew what to do.
One student got shrapnel on his head. Another student has shrapnel all up and down his arms, and he was sitting next to two of the students that were shot, so he was covered in blood. Students were in all areas of the classroom trying to just hide and protect themselves because we had no warning. We were given no warning.
The gunshots kept on going, and then I heard the glass on my door shatter. And since I was under the desk, I could only see the people in front of me, so I couldn't see my teacher at the time, but I later found out that she was actually standing right by the door, because at the time she thought it was a drill. Everybody in the room kind of thought it was a drill. And then I heard the glass on my door shatter.
911, what's your emergency? What school is it?
Shooter.
Okay, is anybody injured?
Yes, a lot of blood. Please help, please.
Martin, building's covered by school. It's being shot up. It's being shot up? Are you at the school? I can't hear you. Are you at the school?
I never heard real life gunshots, so I was like sitting there processing like, what is this? This is really what I think it is. And at that moment, my friend Helena behind me, she pushed my shoulders and she said, Sam. And that's the moment when I knew I had to move. I knew this is real.
The class split in half. Half of us went to what I call the safe corner. It was out of the view of the window, and then the other half of us went to, I call the bad corner, because we were in complete view of the window that was in the door. For me, it was what I saw first. I saw that corner first, and I just ran there.
I went straight to the corner right in front of me, which ended up being straight across from the door. And it took 2 seconds to realize, guys, we need to move, this is stupid. So then I ended up being next to Helena and Nick, and then some other people huddled in the corner.
I remember my friend Helena again. She was behind me and she whispered in my ear. She was saying, grab a book, maybe it'll help. And I just reached and grabbed the book and I held it up. It was literally like so tiny, it probably didn't make a difference, but I held it up.
Within seconds of that first shot, the gunman was ambushing my door and shot through the glass. They all went scrambling and we just heard the shots very loud, and they came in through the classroom, and he was just aiming anywhere that he found movement.
Holy shit! Holy shit! Oh my god! Oh my god!
I was just waiting for him to open the door, because all you had to do was reach your hand, and I could see the door from where I was crouched with the kids, and he could just easily have opened the door. And I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm going to say something. I was going to stand up. I didn't know if I'd get the chance, but my first reaction was, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to say, we love you, because I thought, how can you shoot people that love you?
But I was still sitting there. I didn't understand. I was telling myself, okay, it's a senior prank. It's Valentine's Day. Because I saw red on the floor, and I was telling myself, oh, it's a paintball gun. And then when I looked up, I saw Helena slumped over dead. And that's when I went into survival mode. And as soon as I saw her, Nicholas Tourette fell over to the ground. And when he fell over, I just followed his every move, and I fell over with him, and then I put myself underneath his body, and I laid there. I was just praying, and then at one point I told God that if it was going to be anywhere, just make sure it's somewhere that I die quickly and I can't feel it. And after laying there for about what felt to be an eternity, but it was more like 20 seconds, he moved on to the next class. Nicholas's body got heavy on me, the weight, so I rolled him off of me and I placed his head on his arm so his head wouldn't be on the cold floor. And I just sat there. I was in shock. But I was still in complete view of the window, and we all thought he was coming back.
Can you hear where the shots are coming from?
It was in the hallway. They were shooting into my classroom.
They're shooting into your classroom?
They were.
Okay. Do you hear the shots now?
Well, we're in class 1214.
What is it?
1214.
1214? Is there any way that the doors can lock? Is the teacher in there with you?
Yes, the door is locked. My teacher's on the phone too, I think. But he shot our window in, so if he could open the door if he wanted to. It's from the inside now.
We waited and we waited until the gunshots started getting closer again. And closer and closer. And then you could see the bullets flying through the walls, smoke everywhere. The smell was just overwhelming.
He shot into my classroom twice. And in that classroom, the students stepped up and they were heroes. The students communicated and talked with each other to help each other. They told me that they could hear the shooter out in the hallway. So that's how we knew he was still there in the hallway. So we did our best to stay quiet.
I remember standing there for a moment, frozen. I remember they started to scatter and run towards the windows of the classroom, which is on the opposite side of the classroom door. And when I saw them shuffling around trying to get to that direction of the classroom, I said, no, no, not there, go that way, go that way.
I was dozing off when the shots started. I woke up with a start and saw everyone rushing to the wrong side of the room. She quickly hurried the kids to the correct side of the room, closest to the wall where we couldn't be seen.
I actually called my mom in that period of time before he had shot into our room, but while he was shooting in the hallway. And I don't really remember the whole conversation because my body was in shock, but all I remember saying is, shooter, shooter. And my mom was telling me to breathe and trying to calm me down.
I was right behind the filing cabinet, right next to the podium, just stood there in silence staring at each other for about a few seconds until we saw the glass break through the doors.
All of a sudden I felt the bullet hit me. And all I could think of was, I'm not ready to die yet. Why me? I don't know what happened. I was just so shocked that I got shot.
No one really made any initial scream or gasp for help right when it happened. So no one really knew that anyone got shot until a few seconds followed and we heard Maddie start to moan and this kid Ben in our class who got shot in the arm and the stomach, he started asking for water for somebody to help him. And Carmen, I looked over and she was face down and I looked over at my friend Moises who was directly behind her and he just shook his head she's not there anymore.
I was standing on the other side of my desk to assess the situation, and I saw one of my students was laying there lifeless. She was unresponsive. That was Carmen. I went up closer to see, but there was no movement, no nothing. She was just laying there in a pool of her blood. Her hair was covering her face.
Unfortunately, in that moment, you kind of knew that she wasn't breathing and that she wasn't gonna make it out just because of how lifeless she looked. You just want to be able to have that hope and have that, you just want to be able to do something for her, but at that moment there was nothing you could really do.
I remember turning around and looking to my right, and I see my classmates, Ben and Carmen, and all I can see is blood. And so I turn back around because obviously no one can help me from where I am. And then I remember hearing the fire alarm and just kind of blacking out.
Did you see Maddie get shot?
I didn't see because my head was ducked down, but like I knew someone got shot next to me and it was Maddie.
About how far was she from you?
Like less than 2 feet.
I definitely heard like when the bullets shot Maddie, I heard her like slump against the podium. And I had her be like 1 foot away from me, and just how the small gap between possibly me and the bullet and Maddie and the bullet is just insane. And I still carry a guilt with me to this day because I feel like in a way she kind of took a bullet for me.
How far was Carmen from you?
I want to say like 2 to 3 feet.
Oh, and Ben and Sam were right there too?
Yeah, they were like, I want to say 5 feet away. It was just like in a line.
So do you feel really lucky that you weren't shot?
I feel extremely lucky, but it's also survivor's guilt at the same time.
So you're trying to figure out, like, what could this noise possibly be? Nobody was killed on the second floor because there weren't any targets. We had enough warning to clear out the hallway and hide before he was on the second floor. And so there was nobody in the hallway. We were very quiet, and even when he shot into a couple classrooms, there was no reaction, there was no noise. And it just so happened that the 2 classrooms he shot in did not have students or a teacher in it. And I also heard from a teacher that he said something along the lines like, "No one's here." So I think he, out loud.
Just to himself?
Yes. She says she clearly heard him make a comment like, "Nobody's here," or something along those lines. I believe he just concluded that there was nobody on that floor. You know, on the second floor, it was very clear that there was a loud sound that sounded very scary. Now on the third floor, they didn't have the same volume.
It sounded rapid, and it sounded like someone was kind of like sliding a table across the floor.
When we first heard it going off, we were just like, oh, it's a computer cart. 'Cause computer cart it's like a giant metal cart that all the computers would be in. It would go up and down floors, so you would hear like sometimes like do 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 do. So we heard that, and all of us just looked and went, "Oh, it's a computer cart." That was the only explanation.
Bro, what? I know you. I know you guys hear me. It sounded like somebody in the bathroom.
It's very muffled. Whatever noise, if anybody heard a noise, it was quite muffled and it didn't sound dangerous. And then we just sort of moved on.
We were practicing some math problems. A young lady needs to go use the restroom. I let her out on a pass. I mentioned to her that the third floor restrooms are locked, first floor restrooms are locked, so she has to go down to the second floor in order to use the restroom. I give her the pass. She leaves. As she leaves, maybe a little bit afterwards, but I'm still at the door, I hear 3 loud, I'll call them pops, 3 loud pops. But I've been in a simulation before. I know what that gunfire sounds like. And so I had honestly thought that it was the beginning of a drill.
I was gonna go down to the bathroom. I was on the 3rd floor. And I'm going down the stairs. I didn't know that they were shots that I was hearing. I look over the railing, nothing was there, but I knew that I had to go because I knew that that wasn't safe in there. So I went back up the stairs. I was just like, what's going on? There's a loud noise. I don't know where I should be. And so I'm knocking on the door, nobody's answering, and I'm like, guys, it's me, it's Leah, like, can you guys open the door? That loud noise wasn't me, and they opened it.
So you missed death by probably...
A minute, maybe. It's just seconds at that point.
Leah came back to the door. She knocked on the door, and I kind of made a joke. I said, if I get an effing conduct because I let a kid in during a drill, right? I said, I'm gonna be unhappy. I said, but I'm not leaving you in the hall. And then that's when I heard what would have been glass shattering and bullets hitting a metal door. It didn't sound, it sounded like silverware falling or glass breaking.
I sit at my desk grading papers, and fire alarm goes off. All right. Fire alarm goes off. We've been told, you hear the fire alarm, you evacuate. So everyone starts leaving the room.
It was weird because it was the second fire alarm of the day. At the end of the day, right before the bell let out.
And the fire alarm goes off. We are trained to just exit. It's like a rote response. So I grabbed my emergency folder and my phone like I always do, told everyone where we would meet outside, and everyone started filing out of the class. The hallway was filled with kids.
The hallway, when we went out, it was super crowded. You were like this with people because every class was out there.
When I get to the stairwell is when I first start hearing shots. We had a meeting earlier, a staff meeting earlier that morning. We'd been warned that we were gonna have a code red drill. I thought, this is a weird time for a code red drill because at the tail end of the day. But I was like, okay, so I just assumed that they were using blanks. So all the kids started coming up in mass, and I decided, I was gonna stay at the end of the hallway and try and herd them back to the room.
And I remember going 1 floor down and leaning over the edge of the railing, and I saw a long black case, either a guitar case or what I thought was a gun case at the time. And that's when I kind of knew what was going on.
We walked down the hallway towards the staircase when the entire hallway stopped. And it just went silent for a second. And then everyone just started screaming and running back up the stairs.
I got everybody out of my class, and I had just shut the door behind me, and it was locked. It's always in a locked position. I just shut it behind me, and I walked about 2 feet from my door, and then all of a sudden I heard screaming and kids coming back towards me. And that's where I feel like time stood still, but then it went by so fast at the same time.
And then everybody started to, run and scram. Everybody went separate directions. Me and my friend Joaquin Oliver went downstairs. Before I walked into the 2nd floor, I heard like gunshots, but like really, really close to me. So my first instinct was to walk back up, to the 3rd floor, wherever I could find safety. When I walked into the 3rd floor, from the corner of my eye, like I could still see downstairs, and that's when I saw the shooter walk into the 2nd floor.
So you saw the shooter. What did he look like?
I know he was wearing Douglas attire, which is a JROTC shirt with khaki pants to blend in, and something black on his face.
And why do you think he was dressed like that?
To blend in. If it was a Wednesday, that's the day where everybody dresses in JROTC attire.
So we all ran back upstairs. People flooded into classrooms, just crowding, pushing.
Kids are running and screaming towards me, and I was still confused. Why are they screaming? Then I heard the gunshots, very clear in the stairwell. It was very loud and it was echoing. And then I just turned on my heel, just walked the 2 paces to my door and unlocked my door. I can't tell you how many times I fumble with that key just on a regular day. And the fact that I got that key that's on a chain of maybe 6 or 7 keys, and I got it directly into that lock. Kids started pouring into my room, and I'm just ushering them in.
I heard just
a teacher from across the hall screaming, "Everybody, slow down," and just screaming. And so I went to the door. I had a student beg me, don't open the door, but I went to the door and I just started pulling kids in. And for every one kid that I would pull in, they would pull in friends.
We went out into the hallway and I started going down the stairs until everybody started shoving me back towards Mr. Beagle, and I got pushed all the way back to my classroom, and I stood there with Mr. Beagle and told him I'm scared, I don't know what's going on. Then I saw students walk past me say, this can't be happening, I don't want to die, this can't be happening.
And then all of a sudden I see the shooter emerge from the stairwell. And I just remember looking at him and just looking at this figure that is just so menacing. His face was covered. I describe him as wearing a gas mask because that's what it looked like to me at the time. But his face was definitely covered. His head was definitely covered. I didn't see any skin. He was black from head to toe, black vest, black pants. I remember screaming to Scott Beagle, who was right next door to me, doing the same exact thing I was doing at the same time. And I remember yelling at him to shut his door because he didn't have a good visual of the shooter like I did. And I closed my door. I just know I gotta get this door shut. And when I did that, that's when I felt a little ping on my arm. And I didn't really know what it was. At the time I had a jacket on, and so I just felt a little like something, hit my arm. And I got my door shut and I just held it.
I stood there for a couple of seconds looking at all the other students run into the classrooms, and then I turned around, Beagle's door was open again, and I ran in. Mr. Beagle held the door open for students to run in. He didn't make it out, but I was the last person to run inside the classroom. So if it wasn't for him having the door open, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
As I get about even with my door, which is the second door down in the hallway, there's a guy at the end of the hallway shooting. What I thought I saw was a kid with tactical vest, pants with lots of pockets, and I thought I saw a gas mask and a hat. Apparently the gas mask, I've been told, was mistaken. He had just shooting glasses on. But one of the things I want you to understand is I'm not surprised I was off on that, because he was far 20 feet away, 25 feet away when he was the closest to me, and it was smoky in the hallway. When I say it was smoky, I want you to think concert stage smoky. So again, I still think it's a drill. Start walking towards my door, and that's when Joaquin got hit. And he went down, and I said, that in my head, I knew that he's one of my former students. I know him pretty well. The kid's not an actor. I saw the shooter train on me, and that's when I reached my arms out wide and pushed as many kids as I could in the little alcove outside my door. When in the process of pushing them in the alcove, I got grazed twice. I got a bullet grazed right under my eye and one on my hip.
I ran across the hall to Miss Mitko's room, and I was just standing next to the door letting people in, and I ran inside and I laid down and started calling 911.
The kids were crying, the girls had mascara running down their faces. I just kind of pictured like this bubble around us. I kept visioning this bubble just around, going around and around to keep us safe. They told me that they thanked me for being calm, but I really wasn't. They don't know that, but they said I looked very calm, but inside I was just a wreck. I was texting my husband and my daughter and saying, please call 911. He's here on the 3rd floor. Tell them he's right outside of 1253, my classroom. Tell them to come.
The bullets were it was so loud, so much shooting next door into Scott's room, and then straight into my classroom through the glass panel.
Did you think you were going to die that day?
Yeah, to the point where I was actually crouching down, and after a while I kind of gave up hope, and I thought in my head maybe if I fell asleep it wouldn't be painful.
This is a tough question. In your interview with the Associated Press, you talked about you had locked yourself out of your room.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you locked yourself out of your room, how did that affect things moving forward?
Honestly, I made a mistake, and it's something that I've been dealing with, but I've been avoiding the could-haves and should-haves, and what could have happened. I've been dealing with what did happen.
It was just locked, and he was searching, and he didn't have them on him. Usually they're around his neck, but it wasn't there, and we just couldn't get it open.
The shooting stopped. So I stuck my head out, saw where he was. He was about 25, 30 feet away, but the gun was up, and he was fiddling with it. I don't know if he was reloading. I later found out I think it jammed or something. I looked at the kids who were with me. I said, run.
He started going rampage on everyone. Just started pow, pow, just rounds just going by, just shots going off everywhere. I just dove out of the way, and then as I was diving, one hit me out of several of them. Obviously, if he had more rounds in, I probably would have died. So I don't know how I got out, but I did. Ran down the stairs 3 flights, and I was out.
How were you able to do that when he shot your foot off almost?
Adrenaline and high hopes.
He had been shot on the 3rd floor and was running down the stairs and ran out into the parking lot. When I saw him, he was obviously upset and screaming and crying and saying he had been shot. When I came across him, he had a massive gunshot wound to his, I believe it's his right leg. So I grabbed him, told him he'd be okay. We proceeded then back out towards the baseball field, which was out and around the football field to a clubhouse area where we were.
And then we ran across the football field to the baseball locker room. And we went in there and I got bandaged up.
What exactly did you tell the officer?
He asked me, do you know where he is, what he's using? I'm like, yeah, what is he wearing? I'm like, he's wearing black jacket, all tactical vest on, and then he's on the 3rd floor. And they're like, all right, that's good, thank you.
We spoke with the doctors afterwards. I mean, the doctors don't know how he ran because basically when the round severed the tendon or ligament, whatever it was, that allows the foot to go up and down. For all intents and purposes, he shouldn't have been able to lift his foot up and down. But obviously, on pure adrenaline and fight to survive and wanting to survive, he went down all 3 flights of stairs and ran out into the parking lot.
Had that bathroom door been unlocked, Joaquin could have gotten in there. And when the shooter came down the hallway, he fatally wounded Joaquin.
Wasn't there a time when you asked Joaquin, hey, we gotta go, we gotta go?
Yeah, he was covered in blood, and I even looked at myself and I'm like, am I ready to run? And I said, let's do it. Joaquin said, I can't really remember, but all I remember is no, he didn't go. And
because he couldn't put any weight on the knee?
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
The fact that the 1st floor bathroom and the 3rd floor bathrooms were locked, why are they locked?
That was a decision by the security we've had issue before that with kids smoking in the bathrooms, so they were trying to make it so that the kids had to go to one bathroom to limit that.
Kids would come from all over campus to go to those bathrooms. They were air conditioned. They were nice bathrooms. And there were drug deals going on, and they felt that this was a way to control it.
One of my classmates got a phone call from her sister, and she was like saying, it's real, like this isn't fake, this is people are getting hurt. And I was like, she must be like misinformed, like she must be scared or something. Another classmate looked on the news and it was real. And I didn't know how to react. I was like, what? This can't be real. It's Parkland, this doesn't happen.
Were people talking?
A couple of us were. We were just trying to figure out what was happening. Is he gonna come back? What's happening to us? And then we were also thinking stupid things too, like, oh, is the bell gonna ring at 2:40 and are we all gonna get to leave?
And there was no bell at 2:40?
There was no bell at 2:40.
We were all, sitting down quietly, and that's when we started to hear like this kid start screaming help. But we didn't know whether or not he was doing that, to get more kids out the class, or that was actually a kid asking for help.
What was Anthony Borges exactly yelling out?
He was screaming, help me, please help me.
Was he really?
He was.
Does that haunt you? Do you hear that voice? Do you?
Yeah. Like the first few nights, I just remember thinking oh my God, I couldn't help him. Just horrible, since the door was right there and we could have easily gone out. It's just horrible to think that you couldn't help someone.
We heard someone calling for help, and I would look at them and I would just shake my head and I would tell them no, no, no.
My students and I were all looking at each other like, what do we do? But it could have been the shooter trying to lure us out. You open up your door and you open up the possibility of getting all your students and yourself killed.
Ben was screaming for help, and Miss Riovan was able to rush over to him and help bandage some of his wounds, and we were able to quiet him down because we didn't know where the shooter was.
He asked for water. I gave him the bottle of water that I had on my desk, and he drank that water. I saw Samantha, she was shot in the knee. I saw she was stable.
I was kneeling down on the ground and stood up and saw Maddie slumped against the front side of the desk.
Maddie? And then I went back to Maddie, and Maddie, I could see she was shot multiple times, but I didn't know exactly where. She was in and out of consciousness, and she turned pale white, her lips were white, she was moaning and groaning, and then there was some silence. I saw it was multiple wounds, but I didn't know exactly where they were, so I was afraid to move her, and because I left her the way she was, that saved her life. Otherwise, if I laid her flat, from what I understand, her lungs would have collapsed.
I was asked by a classmate to bandage Maddie because she wasn't moving and was no longer making any noise. And so I walked over to Maddie and wrapped the jean jacket I was given around her arm, and then used the other side of the jean jacket to kind of hold against her torso area where she was also hit. And that's where I stayed until the officers came and got us.
3 down, 3 injured. Is anybody injured? Yeah. Shot. Where? Come here. Right here. Right here. You come up. Can you walk? Where were you shot? I need help. I need help. Somebody help me. Look out, look out, look out, look out. Oh my God. You guys are okay. We're gonna get you out of here. We're gonna get you out of here. I need your help. You need my help, us?
Logan, my desk with my water bottle. Can you get my phone? With the bag, with the water bottle next to the balloon. Yes.
Let's go, come on, let's go. Let's go. Come on, follow me, follow me, follow me. Okay, police.
Where?
Hug the wall, hug Around the wall. Go, 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 go.
Oh my God!
Over the street. All right, come on.
Hannah was sitting upright with her head leaned over, and Nick was down on his side. And then I grabbed Helena's hand, and I didn't let go until SWAT came in.
And so when the SWAT team came in, they said, "Who's injured?" And that's when Sam Fuentes stood up, and it looked like from the movie Carrie at the end when I couldn't see any of her. She was just standing, but she was standing completely covered in blood, and I was in shock. And then they took her out, and they told us, "Don't look down, don't," they didn't want us to look anywhere, just look straight ahead and walk out.
I didn't really know how badly injured I was. Only after the girl next to Helena, she told me. She said, "Sam, you're grazed." And I didn't know what that meant. I was still very kind of disoriented and confused. But I knew I was injured of some sort, so I raised my hand and I said, "I'm injured." And I actually was escorted out of the classroom.
Drop the backpack, drop the backpack. Go, 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 to the street, go.
There was like this thought that it just wasn't real, that it was actors, which doesn't make sense now, and then we got outside. At this time I was just in total shock, like I was crying, I was having a panic attack, and I remember just my legs and my arms going completely numb, and I just fell to the ground, and I just sat there and I cried.
It took me a few moments to leave the room, because when I started to walk, that's when the reality of the students that were still in the classroom kind of washed over me, because I knew we had injured, I knew there was blood, but I didn't want it to be that they were not going to be able to get out of there.
What did you see exactly when you left your room?
I mean, it was pretty bad. The first thing that I recognized was a path of blood, like someone had been dragged in front of my doorway. And when I looked up, Scott Beagle was in his little alcove. His door was open.
And I remember standing up, and the first thing I saw was Mr. Beagle on the floor, because he was next door to Miss LaPelle's class. And I remember just breaking down, like I just couldn't breathe. But they made me stand up and leave anyway.
After they let us out, we had to walk behind each other in a line and hold each other's shoulders like this. And when I was walking, I looked down and I saw two bodies of two girls on top of each other. And I looked down and I immediately looked away, because I knew if I looked at it any more, I would get super traumatized, or if it was somebody I knew, I couldn't take it.
Police were telling us not to look and to look away, but I mean, how could you not look at something so terrible? Like, how could you divert your eyes from your friends who are laying on the floor next to you, like, as you're slipping in their own blood? Like, I could never forget that.
I saw someone in white pants, and I remember a kid in my class, Joaquin, was wearing white pants that day and a pink shirt, and everyone just knew it was him. And that's when everyone that was in the line, when we had our hands up walking down the hallway, we all started crying even more than we already were.
What I saw was people holding each other outside, teachers sitting down on the grass just stunned with tears coming down their eyes, and then some of us, like me, I was just walking around like a zombie. And I just remember us looking at each other like, what just happened?
We found out about it over the radio. I was here in my office at the time of the call. Found out over the police radio that there had been a shooting, active shooter at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. That is not in our city. We're in the city of Coconut Creek, but it is a neighboring city, Parkland. I was listening to the radio on the way there, hearing some updates, what they were discovering, and it sounded as if he had fled the school. There's a lot of work to be done inside the school still, because we don't know if that information is accurate, but we also have to address the fact that he may be away from the school at the time too. It was overwhelming. There was a lot of police force there by the time I'd arrived. My mind started wondering, if he has left the school, me running towards the school, is that the best thing? A call came across the radio which kind of helped me make the decision. Dispatch advised that he may be at the McDonald's, which is close to the area. All these other agencies are here and they may not know where that McDonald's is. And I wanted to make sure that someone went to that direction and covered that possibility. That's what led me to leave.
And how did someone know that he might have been there?
That I don't know. Could have been some type of phone call, something. I don't know that part. That was all through dispatch.
Now you got the description of the shooter, correct?
That's the only thing I had. They had given that over the radio as well. They gave us a description of what he was wearing, and they gave us his name.
When you saw the killer, did you know right away it was him?
No. All I knew at that point is I had a high school-looking individual, a teenager, wearing the clothing description that was given.
Did you have a gut feeling it was him?
I kind of did.
What was he doing exactly when you saw him?
He was walking. His back was to me. He was walking in an eastbound direction on the sidewalk.
You would think a guy on the run like that, would he really be walking alone like that out in the clear? What did you sense from him? That he wanted to get away, or he knew he was going to get caught and he just surrendered?
He seemed like he was focused. He had a focus forward. I'm not really sure what he was thinking. I don't know if he was planning an escape. I don't know what was on his mind, but he appeared to be focused. His head was straight ahead and just walking with, it seemed with a purpose. The area where I found him is a quiet residential roadway. I immediately stopped my vehicle. He continued to walk. He did not see me or hear me because I was behind him. And drew my weapon as I stepped out of the vehicle. And when I slammed the door, he looked over his shoulder because he heard the door close. And at that point, I was already drawn down on him, had my weapon pointed at him, and started giving him verbal commands.
And he complied with everything right away?
Yes, he did.
I get a call from my editor. I think I had seen the push alert coming through the phone. There was a shooting at a high school, but we get so many of these kind of alerts, and then it turns out to be unfounded. There's nothing actually happened. At first it didn't alarm me until I got the call, and then my editor said, "You're the closest person to Marjory Stoneman Douglas. You need to leave right now, and you need to go there." And I was on the highway heading there that I started seeing the cops passed me by, and it was car after car after car after car with the sirens blaring. And that's when it started to sink in. As soon as I got there, I parked right off the highway. There was no parking. I mean, everything was completely full of cars, full of people in the streets, parents running around, screaming. And I threw my car to the side. I parked really quickly next to a tree and started running in the direction of the school. The parents were screaming. They were trying to reason with the police officers, and the officers they were just trying to keep everything calm. The kids were kind of hysterical. They were talking to each other. Some were crying. Some were just sitting, like staring blankly out. It was a very eerie scene.
The next thing I remember, or I kind of heard, was the guys coming into our rooms and checking everybody. And I remember them putting me on a stretcher. I couldn't see because I was kind of out of it, but I remember hearing some faint voices.
Actually, when the officers took the injured out of the classroom, they only took Sam and Ben and left Carmen and Maddie because they thought that they were both deceased. And they returned to the classroom 2 or 3 more times to find that Maddie was actually breathing, and that's when they took her out of the classroom and started bringing her to the ambulance and started working on her.
Blacked out again until the paramedics woke me up in the ambulance.
This BSO SWAT officer had already put a chest seal on Maddie's entrance wound, which looked like the size of a dollar bill. It was a big size, and her elbow was also shattered. That's when I told the guys I need a baseline set of vital signs. Usually when a person is in a deep state of shock, the blood is shunted away from the periphery and into your core organs. So that's why you get pale, that's why you get no pulses, and it's very difficult to start an IV. So an intravenous line. So at that point it was like, by experience, I go, start an IL. And that's an intraosseous needle that's drilled into the head of your humerus. And it is so easy because all you have to do is find the landmark.
Tell us how you found out.
I was at work in Nashville in a meeting with about 15 other colleagues, and Maddie's mom called and left a message with me, and I looked down on my phone and it was like a voice to text thing, and saw part of her message about there's been a shooting at the school, and I was like, what? I didn't even like register in my mind. Like, I was like, what is this? So I got up and listened to her voicemail, and she's like screaming, there's been a shooting at the school, and like, I haven't heard from Madeline. I booked a ticket on Southwest that they had 3 hours later. I got to the airport, and it's all over the CNN and the screens everywhere, and people are like looking at us. I'm like staring at the CNN screen, like trying to like see if I could see her. You know, like, is she in the crowd somewhere? And haven't heard. And when I got to the gate and was about to get on the plane, Missy called me and said that she was at the hospital with her and that she had been shot.
Then I remember being wheeled into the hospital, into a trauma room. And then I blacked out. And then I remember getting a CT scan.
And I just walked in and saw her, and she looked like she'd been run over by a truck. And there was cops everywhere, and her brother and my son was there, and I just remember walking in and thinking, thank God she's alive.
Maddie Wilford played basketball for me at Stoneman Douglas, and she came out as a 9th grader, played JV, and was a phenomenal person. That night, obviously, I wasn't sleeping, and many people weren't, so I texted Maddie's mom and I asked, please, I haven't heard from Maddie, is she okay? And her mom told me she was having her second surgery at 3:30 in the morning. And that's when I found out that she had been injured. I instinctively took a picture that I had on my phone and I posted it asking for prayers on my Facebook page and on South Florida Girls Basketball website, and the outreach was completely unexpected and something that I still am in awe of, the fact that it was shared 250,000 times around the world.
People have called your daughter a miracle. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, she is a miracle.
Do you consider yourself a miracle that you're living?
Yeah. Yeah. Because just the way the bullets went in me and the way the doctors operated on me and the fact that I stayed in the hospital for a week, definitely a miracle.
And when you were slumped over and you were in a position where you wouldn't bleed out, now did you make a conscious decision to do that? Was that instinctive or that was just luck?
I think it was just luck.
Wow.
Dr. Mergel worked on my arm and my ribs, stitched together my arm because it had, the bullet went through my arm and around and came out here and kind of exploded it. And so he patched that together, and he also put titanium plates in my ribs. I also had a hole in my lung, but thankfully because I was healthy, they didn't have to replace it. Dr. Nietzsche Parenko sewed together my stomach, or my abdomen.
I'm Madeline Wolford. And I'd just like to say that I'm so grateful to be here, and it wouldn't be possible without those officers and first responders and these amazing doctors, and especially all the love that everyone has sent. And I was sitting on my couch today just thinking about all the letters and gifts that everyone has given, and just like all the love that's been passed around. I definitely wouldn't be here without it, and I just want to send my appreciation love out to all of you. And that, like my mom said, it's times like these when I know that we need to stick together, and I've seen a lot of like positive posts about what's been going on at the school, and I just love the fact that we're sticking together at this, and I'm just glad that I'm making a full recovery and everything's been going so smoothly. So that's all I have to say.
I was nervous, and I guess I just kind of broke down because how grateful I was to everyone out there. I just wanted to let them know that I was okay and that I was thankful for all that they were doing.
What has this whole experience with Maddie meant to you?
Well, as a result of how God saved Maddie, the whole result has been that it's made me a better person, and it's made me want to help others even more for the glory of God.
So that bullet that hit her, you really think would have hit you?
Yeah. And she was basically like my shield.
Wow, so Maddie Wilford literally took a bullet for you?
Yeah.
How do you live with that every day?
Honestly, I don't know.
I'm just grateful that she's alive. And that she's like a miracle, and she's like brand new. You wouldn't even notice that she was like shot or even like in that kind of condition.
She said that I took the bullets for her, and if I wasn't in front of her that she would have gotten them, and I didn't really know what to think, but I was like, I'm just glad that you didn't get hit and that I'm okay, and I'd take a bullet for her any day, and so, I mean, I'm okay. So she didn't have to feel guilty about that I was in front of her.
Maddie wrote a Mayor book, girl, I love you so much. I'm so blessed that I got to know you this year and we became close. You're amazing and strong, and I know you'll get through this. I loved walking into class and be lifted up when I heard your laugh. It's not your fault, and never think or feel guilty that I got shot instead of you. I love you so much, and I would rather get hit than see you struggle more. I cherish all the memories we created, and I'm happy I'm here today to create more. Keep being strong, and you know we're here to support you. I love you, Ivana. Maddie Wilford.
I heard on the news that there was a shooting at a Florida high school. And of course I thought first thing was, could this be at Scott's high school?
The first thing I did when I realized what school it was and that it was Scott's school is I texted Scott. There's no reason to worry unless there's a reason to worry. In my philosophy, I'm not going to worry unless there's a reason to worry. And in my mind, I guess denial took over because it couldn't be my son.
The first thing I did was I texted him. I got my phone. I said, are you okay? He didn't answer. Then I said, I heard there's a shooting. Are you okay? Didn't get an answer. Called, went to voicemail.
I got into the car and I did put on the news. And I did hear in the car that a geography teacher and cross-country coach was shot.
We knew that Scott was a geography teacher. And we still didn't know if it was Scott. And we still kind of thought, okay, it's coincidental, but it's kind of narrowing things down. And we were worried. My daughter called me and said, Dad, I just heard Scott's name on the news. And I believe that it was Kelsey Friend that had mentioned that her teacher, the geography teacher, was shot, and she didn't know if he made it. I then looked at Michael and I said, we have to get down to Florida tonight.
We got on the plane. It was a really long plane flight. I was trying to convince everybody that it's really okay. We're gonna get there, we're gonna find out where Scott is, and we're gonna go find out. And it's okay that nobody knows and nobody's telling us anything because maybe he's just one of the people that they can't identify.
In my mind, I knew it was really bad because if Scott was okay, he would have found some way of getting in touch. Even if he didn't have his phone, some way he would have said, I'm okay.
We believed that, you know what, we were going to end up going to a hospital, and maybe he was critically injured, but he was going to be okay, some way, somehow. We ended up going to the command center, and there were a lot of people in that command center. Some people were very upset, some people were very quiet. Everybody was kind of to themselves.
Time went by, and I think it was almost like 10 to 3 in the morning. They called us in, and I had my brother, and I had my husband, and I had a good friend of Scott. And there were law enforcement. There were probably 6 or 7 law enforcement. So we were sitting like in a circle, so it was us and then them. And one of the lady law officers said, she leaned forward and she said, I have to tell you, your son is definitely a hero. And then 2 people over from her, a gentleman, law enforcement person, said, he definitely died a hero because he didn't make it. So she told me my son was a hero, which I could have told her my son was a hero before he saved people's lives. And then two people over said, but he didn't make it. Okay. What do you do? I mean, what do you do? So, I recall not wanting to throw up in front of everybody. So there were a lot of, there was like, oh my God, there were tears. I just walked to the back of the room. I remember there's a garbage pail there. And I threw up and I came back.
And it was the worst nightmare or thought that we could ever have heard. My sister asked some questions. I was kind of shocked that she had the ability to actually ask some questions, but she did.
And I gathered myself and I just had some questions to ask. I needed answers to questions. I wanted to know, when can I see my son? Okay? You just confirmed to me that he's dead. Okay? You waited a long time to let me know this. When can I see my son? And I didn't get an answer. The answer was not acceptable. The answer was basically, you know, as soon as we're allowed to let you see him. Not acceptable.
Pretty much after that was a blur. Okay, couldn't believe it. Like, I say it's like a bad dream wrapped up in a nightmare while living in hell. We stayed there, I don't know, it was 10 minutes or an hour. We got escorted out. Mark had made arrangements. We went to a hotel. I don't know if we slept much. I know I didn't. I just sat on the sofa watching TV. I didn't know what else to do.
Carmen's such a beautiful, brilliant, introspective, lovely young lady.
Insightful.
And she received the
National Merit
Scholarship.
The day after?
A day after.
Her murder?
Yeah.
We loved Sherlock. That was like our, Sherlock and Doctor Who and Supernatural were like our in common shows. She always had the perfect winged eyeliner. Like my friend on graduation did winged eyeliner and red lips in honor of Carmen because that was like her look every day.
She would always, at the end of class when the kids were dismissed, kids were, you know, shuffling out of the classroom and, bye, Miss Rioven, have a good day, Miss Rioven, bye. She'd always stop at my desk and, you know, say something about the lesson we just learned or, you know, what she's going to be doing the next day.
Carmen was that girl in the class who everyone knew was super bright, but we didn't really talk that much. And like, I feel a sense of guilt that we didn't all get to know her very well when she was still here.
She was the first one to make friends with anyone that she encountered in her life. If you were new and came up in her path, hi, how are you? I'm Gina, welcome. And that was evident from first grade. She was starting to do that again in high school.
One of her favorite quotes from that Percy Jackson series of books was, I'm not choosing your path.
I'm making my own.
I'm making my own.
Do you remember the last time you were with her and what you guys talked about?
It was Valentine's Day morning. She was getting ready to go and we gave her a box of chocolate roses. Her middle name was Rose. And
To eat them before they melt.
told her to eat them before they melted and gave her a card and sent her on her way to school. Said, well, see you this afternoon.
She helped me do this art project because she was such an amazing artist. I had no idea what I was doing, and she came over to me and she's like, can I help you? I was like, yes, like, thank you so much. And she just sat there when she had work to do, and she decided to help me instead. Loved talking to her. Sometimes I'd be upset, and she would look at me and be, why are you upset? And I'd tell her why, and she'd go, well, do you see how many other things you can be happy about? That's just one little problem.
She was killed when she was doing an assignment outside of room 1215. Why was she out in the hallway?
We don't really know why she wasn't in the classroom. We don't pretend to understand the policies and procedures. Personally, haven't delved that deeply into the situation. The outcome is disturbing enough for me.
We have different opinions about that. I, as her mother, feel some compelling interest in knowing exactly how it happened. And when that time comes and is revealed, whether in court or other means, I'll be ready to deal with that, hopefully.
If you had one last moment with Gina, what would you tell her?
Well, I'd tell her the same thing we told her when she left. We love you. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Alyssa was beautiful. She had such zest for life. She took every opportunity to be active with her friends. She loved riding the waves in the ocean. She loved walking on the beach. She was really smart. She already had 12 high school credit classes as a freshman.
We had been friends since 7th grade, so that's the reason that we were science partners. When I found out she was in the class, I was really excited. She would just make the labs so fun. I mean, she took something that was supposed to be just a boring written lab into something that was exciting almost.
She just could make anybody laugh. She did this voice that was so funny, and she would put on little skits for us. She was so good at soccer.
She started playing soccer since she was 3 years old, and she was phenomenal technically. She was an amazing player. She was the number 8. She played the 8 position, and when you turn the 8 sideways, it's the infinity symbol, which means forever.
They used to call her Princess because she was perfect, like, as a person. Like, there was no flaws about her. She has a lot of, like, excitement and, like, spirit in her.
And she wrote really well in creative writing. Like, I always loved to read her articles and things that she would write in class.
We're here because my daughter has no voice. She was murdered last week and she was taken from us. Shot 9 times on the 3rd floor. Now, we, as a country, failed our children. This shouldn't happen. We go to the airport. I can't get on a plane with a bottled water, but we leave it. Some animal could walk into a school and shoot our children. I'm very angry that this happened, because it keeps happening. 9/11 happened once, and they fixed everything. How many schools, how many children have to get shot? There should have been one school shooting, and we should have fixed it. And I'm pissed, because my daughter I'm not going to see again. She's not here. She's not here. Never going to see my kid again. I want you all to know that. Never, ever will I see my kid. That's how I want it to sink in. It's eternity.
It's been 19 years since Columbine and nothing's been done. After 9/11, we hardened the cockpits and we hardened the airports. We created the TSA, After the Oklahoma City bombing, we created another agency to develop standards so we could harden federal buildings. We need to harden our schools just like we hardened our airports and our federal buildings. That is the way we can make our schools safe so that teachers can teach and children can learn without the fear of dying in their classrooms.
The killer, when he got to the 3rd floor, before he left the building, was trying to fire through the windows to shoot at students fleeing, but those windows
were hurricane-proof.
Exactly. How come the windows in the classroom doors are not that?
Good question. It's not a requirement. It's not a building code. We have fire codes. Children haven't died in a fire since 1958. We need national school safety best practices to give guidance to all schools to make them safe.
I mean, Alex was just a wonderful little boy. He loved to play basketball, and he was in the marching band, and he was the little boy that wrote the poem "Life is Like a Roller Coaster" several weeks before he passed away.
We did band together for 3 years. He loved what he did. He loved playing the trombone, was always happy, and he always tried to do his best.
He was someone that I knew I could count on to be a great team player when we did team assignments and group assignments. Just a very sweet, gentle soul.
One of the highlights of his high school career is when they won the national championship, the Stoneman Douglas Marching Band, the Eagle Regiment, and that was amazing. You know, Alex has been through a lot of heartache. You know, when he was 4 years old, his mom passed away suddenly, and it was then just Ryan, Alex, and I. Several years later, I met a wonderful woman whose husband had passed away. We fell in love, and you know, we decided to move to Parkland because you know we thought they had the safest schools and the best neighborhood, and we thought we would have a good life.
Do you remember your last moment with Alex? What that was?
Yeah, it was, you know, kissing him goodnight and telling him that I loved him.
The night before?
Yeah.
If you had one last moment with him, what would you tell him?
That he was the best boy.
When he heard something was going down, that he was, go check it out, try and see what he can do to help.
Yeah, what does that say about him that he goes in there without a gun?
It says it's the type of man he was. If he saw a problem, he tried to fix it. And did the best he could. That's what he was, and that's what ended up happening. He's a guy that, for somebody to work for and work with, is fantastic.
Dedicated isn't the word for it. You need a better word than dedicated. He was there from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, every night.
I just remember him being so passionate about kids and just loved what he's doing. So to think that he just willingly ran into a building and sacrificed his life is just unbelievable.
But what I saw was a deputy arrive at the west side of Building 12, take up a position, and he never went in. Devastated, sick to my stomach. There are no words. I mean, these families lost their children. We lost coaches.
The school resource officer who did not go inside, a lot has been made about that. What's your take on him?
Although I said, like, you don't know how you would react, I believe he had an oath. He was trained. He should have been trained to react in a better way.
Do you believe his story that he thought the shots were coming from outside?
No. I don't see how that could even be a possibility. There's no one outside, no one running outside at that moment. For as long as he was out there, he should have known by now that the shooter was in the building.
All right, 26, so we also heard it over by inside the 1200 building. We're locking down the school right now. All right, do not approach the 12 or 1300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point.
Stay away from 12 and 1300 buildings.
I do think if he would have came in, a lot of lives would have been saved because he was the only person on campus with another firearm.
Complete failure, complete coward. Your sole job is to engage the threat. And you froze.
He said he thought the shots were coming from outside. You can clearly hear his voice on the tape that says inside 1200. And then he goes as far as telling people to stay away.
Right.
What do you think about all that?
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Don't you carry the emblem to serve and protect? Isn't that part of their mantra?
The school resource officer, how often do you think about it had he ran inside? Perhaps the third floor could have been spared.
I couldn't have lived with my son, okay, being such a coward. I would have liked him to be alive, but he couldn't have lived with himself being a coward. Peterson has to live with himself.
How do you explain him saying, I thought the shots were coming from outside, and then on the recorded tape he says, inside 1200. And then why did he tell people to stay away from that building?
He seems to identify the 1200 building as a building where shots are being fired. I can't explain his statements after the fact, but ordering deputies to stay away from the site of an active shooting, that just goes against all the training that's been offered to law enforcement officers since the Columbine shooting.
So after Columbine, the policy changed. Law enforcement's policy was, you got to go in there and get the active shooter. The term is the immediate action, rapid deployment. How come that's not being followed?
That's a great question, but certainly the best practice now is, an officer who shows up and encounters an active shooter, with a rifle or a handgun, does not have time to wait for specialized personnel like SWAT to show up. They have to go in, confront the shooter, and try and start providing first aid as soon as possible.
How would you assess the police response for the Parkland tragedy?
Well, the response certainly seems to have been troubled all the way from the individual school resource officer, Scott Peterson, who first responded, all the way up to the command level of radios failing and communications breaking down. So it was not, I think, how any, police agency would want to respond. I mean, it's important to know these are extremely chaotic situations, and everything that can go wrong does tend to go wrong, but I don't think anyone was satisfied with the way that BSO, in particular the Broward Sheriff's Office, responded. So a lot of questions have been raised about how well prepared the police were.
When did police first go into the building?
They went in 11 minutes after the shooting began.
So roughly 4 to 5 minutes after the shooter had left.
After the shooter had stopped shooting and left, that's correct.
When did SWAT arrive?
That's a great question, and that's not something we've been able to establish exactly. The timeline on when SWAT arrived is hazy, and it's really important because the specially trained teams of medics, the rescue task force that partners with police officers, was not allowed to go into the building and start providing first aid. The Coral Springs fire chief in charge of the rescue task forces was outraged by that decision and wrote in his report that he begged the captain to let him send in the rescue task force teams. She said no because the SWAT medics were already in there. So it's important, really important for us to establish when the SWAT medics got in there, because if they got there after the Coral Springs medics were available to go in, that again seems like time that could have been used to provide treatment.
Now we all know every second counts. You can bleed out in 2 minutes. Do you think had they gotten in there right away, more lives could have been saved?
Without seeing the autopsy reports, that's impossible to say definitively, and certainly lives were saved. But I do know that the parents certainly feel that first aid could have been performed sooner, and that if the officers had made it into the building sooner, especially Deputy Peterson, that the killer would not have been able to make it to the 3rd floor.
The red flags. The FBI apologized for their carelessness. Broward County Sheriff's Office, once again, a big target on that. How in the world did they miss it?
That's a great question, and that's something that the parents, I think, and the children and the victims are asking themselves every day. I mean, not only was it reported to the FBI, not only was his behavior reported to BSO, it was also brought to the attention of the school that he was abusive to a woman, that he hurt animals, got into fights, that he used racial slurs and Nazi propaganda.
Because he pretty much put himself on a milk carton saying, I'm going to do this.
He did. I mean, he commented on YouTube videos. I mean, now it is difficult, how do you know when someone is going to move from threat to action? But clearly, I mean, there should have been some kind of risk assessment done with him. Someone should have sat down and said, we're watching you, we're concerned about you. Of course, they couldn't have taken away his guns at the time because there was no firearm restraining order that was passed after the fact.
Tell us about Scott.
Scott, he was a very unique person. He was very humble, was not somebody that wanted the limelight ever, and had, I would say, one of the most amazing but dry senses of humor that I've ever met in my life. After absorbing what was going on, he would always have some comment or something kind of witty that only Scott could say. He always had some shocking statement that you would say, I can't believe the guy just said that.
When people comment and say to me, oh, he was such a hero that day, he was, no question about it. But he was a hero on the 13th and the 12th and the 11th because his whole being was to have an impact on kids.
If you saw a little kid in a grocery store, really, walking down the aisle with his mom, really upset, Scott would bend down and go, is it really that bad today? You want to talk about it? Or if he saw someone in camp, maybe not part of the popular group who'd been in camp, he'd take that camper aside, and he'd say, you want to tell me about it? What is it that you like best? Let's see what we can do. He would do his lesson plans, he'd share with me, and he'd say, so what do you think about this, Mom? What do you think about that? What do you think I could do to enhance this lesson plan or to make it better?
An elderly woman came over to us and said, I never met your son, but I love him. Okay, you got my curiosity. Her granddaughter was in Scott's class. Now, Scott taught geography. So the assignment he gave was not look at a book and pick out the different countries and their capitals and all that nonsense. He said to this girl, he said, find someone who wasn't born in this country and talk to him. Find out what it was like, where they grew up. It turns out that was the grandmother. And the grandmother said that they had a 3-hour conversation where they had hardly spoken at all for the years before that, and they talked to each other almost every day. That's the impact.
The funeral, your reaction to how so many people were there.
It's funny. I remember the rabbi saying to me, when we went down, that awful day, you go down, you talk to the rabbi, something. I remember the rabbi saying to me, how many people do you think we're going to have? And I said, I don't know, Rabbi, maybe 100 people. And he looked at me and he said, really, Linda? I said, Rabbi Greg, I don't know, 100 people. And I was shocked. Not shocked once I understood how Scott reached people and how people, you know, responded to him. But I just never thought that I was going to have a funeral with a thousand people. And I had to stream it live. I had 500,000 people stream live Scott's funeral.
Tried to make a joke at the funeral where if he was looking down at the funeral, he would think, what are all those people here for? And someone would tell him, oh, it's for your funeral. He said, no, they're all here for the food, because that's the type of sense of humor he had.
If Scott came back and I had a moment with him, I would say to him, I hope that at this moment you can honestly open your eyes and realize how important you were to so many people. I love you. I love being your mom through the good times and the bad times. You need to look in the mirror and you need to see how special you really are.
Jamie was a very interesting kid. Had an amazing smile. That's the biggest thing that I can remember from her. You could read her very easily because her face, she didn't have much of a poker face.
I danced with Jamie for some time, and I just remember at dance, she would always be laughing, and she would just be having like the greatest time, and she was such an amazing dancer. She just really loved to dance.
Back in October, I lost my brother to cancer from his service in 9/11. That at the time seemed impossible to me. It made no sense. It couldn't happen, and it couldn't get worse. This is worse. This makes no sense. This is impossible. My girl, my 14-year-old baby. And for those of you who know my Jamie, she was the life of the party. She was the energy in the room. She made people laugh. And yes, sometimes she made us cry, but she was always known. She always made her presence felt. I sent her to school yesterday. She was supposed to be safe. My job is to protect my children. And I sent my kid to school. In the morning, sometimes things get so crazy, she runs out behind and she's like, I gotta go, Dad, bye. And I don't always get to say, I love you. I don't remember if I said that to Jamie yesterday morning. I love everyone out here. I thank you all for your outpouring of support. Parents, love your kids, hold your kids, kiss your kids, and don't ever, ever miss the chance to tell them how much you love them.
Elena was very beautiful and graceful in everything that she did. Being an English teacher, I get to read a little bit more personal about the students. She wrote about her family and how she got along with her siblings, and you could see her sense of humor in there.
I worked with her on a project one time, and she was just the sweetest thing. She tried to make conversation.
Elena was in the ROTC. They were involved, they were active, and for freshmen, that shows a lot. It shows a lot about their character and how strong they were and just confident people.
He had a heart of gold, and he was so proud because he worked very hard towards his swimming goals. And he was just a very bright spot of the day. He just really was a bright kid and very interested in learning about the Holocaust, and very proud that he had reached that goal where he signed with Indiana.
Nick was one of the class clowns. He was always making jokes. He was so funny, and I knew he aspired to be something big one day. He planned to join the Olympics. The first thing when a girl next to me asked who was hit next to us, I said Nick, and she said he wanted to go to the Olympics. He's supposed to go to the Olympics, and that stayed with me ever since.
Lane 1, Aaron Reiser. Lane 2, Alexander Gardner. Lane 3, Renee Schwarzenegger. Lane 4, Carl Lane 5, Lane 6, Nicholas Ward. Lane 7, Joseph Murphy. Lane 8, Elijah Wood.
Come on, Charlie! Come on, man! Charlie!
Helena, a beautiful young lady, also comes from an amazing family. She's British. She was very proud of her British heritage. She had traveled with us to London, actually, my husband and I, when we chaperoned a dozen girls. She had a great outlook on life.
She brought us to our first concert, like Justin Bieber. We had so much fun. Like, that was my first concert I've ever been to.
She was my best friend. She just cared about you. She remembered tiniest details. Like, I remember telling her I liked fuzzy socks, and then for my birthday she got me a pair of fuzzy socks, and it was just like a tiny detail, and she remembered it. And I remember taking her, she came to church with me 2 months consecutively. So I'm actually kind of grateful for that, because I had to spend time with her, and I also showed her a big part of my life and what it means to me.
He decided that he wanted to play football. And one of the stories that I can tell you about Luke is I shared a portable. Our classroom was the same shared space with our football coach, who would make coffee in the morning, and I had Luke's class first thing in the morning. So Coach May's coffee was ready, and I went up to, the students were doing a group project, and I asked the boys there, do any of you guys play football? And they all said, well, Luke's going to go out for spring football this year. So I said, Luke, come on with me. I said, I need you to go deliver Coach May's coffee to him. And so he'll get to know who you are, and you'll get some, brownie points that you're bringing him coffee, and he'll know who you are for spring football. And so when he came back to the portable, he had a smile from ear to ear, and I asked him, I said, Luke, does Coach May know who you are now? And he says, yep. And so that was, just really heartwarming, and something that I'll never forget.
I remember we used to joke around and try to draw each other, and I would always draw his big curly hair and his red cheeks, and he was really funny about it and ripped it up and then taped it back together because he didn't want to hurt my feelings.
I didn't know that he was one of the victims until the next day, and I was in the living room watching the TV, and when the names and the pictures started to scroll, I just screamed when I saw him, because it just wasn't fair. His family came from Mexico. He really wanted to have a career. He wanted to change his parents' lives. He wanted to help them.
He would go out of his way to make sure that I was okay and that I was having a good day. He would ask me how my day was. He would give me a hug. I still think about if I opened the door, if they were still here. It's something that really gets to me because they were two of my close friends, and I think that if I got to the door fast enough, they would still be here. And so many people have told me, no, you can't do that, it's not your fault, but sometimes I think it is.
If you looked at her, you would have never thought anything bad could have happened to her. She did not have one bad bone in her body.
Kara and I were in Girl Scouts together when we were 5 years old. Then I moved to a different house and I didn't do Girl Scouts anymore. And then it was about a couple months before the shooting when she came up to me, she's like, "You're Leah." And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "We went to Girl Scouts together." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And she sent me a picture. She had pictures of us together and we were just getting to know each other. And that day I actually ate lunch with her. It was me and my friend and Kara, and it was like just the three of us. And like
That very day,
but right before we went to fourth period, I walked to her to class, and yeah, last I saw her.
He loved Stoneman Douglas. He loved all the kids. He always gave people rides on his golf cart around to their classrooms.
He was honestly another father to me. Throughout high school, I made a few bad choices, skipping classes. He never did something to make you feel bad. Instead, he would ask you, why? Why did you do it?
So the shooter was in the hallway, the first floor hallway, and so he went in through the stairwell, and I think what he was trying to do is get a advantage because he could look into the hallway from the stairwell, but he opened that door right when the killer was on the stairs directly across from him, and the killer just turned and shot him.
He died doing the thing that he loved to do.
And that is look out for the students.
Being there for the students and making sure that they're safe.
Peter Wang. He was holding the door open for the second group of kids to come through the door when he got hit. The kid was 14 and had the wherewithal to react to help other people before he even worried about himself. Peter was a gregarious and affable young man. He talked to everybody, but only after his work was done.
Going into the classroom where he's not there anymore, it hurt extremely badly because it's like losing a family member, and then not being there is extremely hard.
He was a very talented JROTC sharpshooter. When his cousin first moved here, he was bullied because he didn't speak English very well because he was an immigrant, and Peter stood up for him even though Peter was younger. And I wrote in my story that just Peter was a protector. From what I heard from everyone, he was a very brave boy. He was very aware of the underdog. He was very aware of everyone who might be hurt, and that was the reason his family and friends told me he sought out JROTC. He really wanted to protect people. So Peter was posthumously admitted to West Point, which is his dream school he'd always wanted to get into, and at his funeral he was even presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom in his casket. His mother was able to give him the award, and his funeral was really well attended by veterans from up and down the coast. I talked to some people who rode their motorcycles as far away as Virginia just to be there because they felt he was an American hero, and he deserved all of the honor and respect they could possibly give him.
Whenever we had Spirit Week and everybody was in the middle during lunch playing music, playing games, he was the one that was the most hyped about it. He was dancing, singing, jumping around. He really was the life and spirit of Douglas.
Every day, he made me laugh until my stomach hurt, and he backed you up when somebody, was being mean to you. I always called him a beautiful soul.
And the fact that, he's gone it's a hole in my life. It really is. I wanted to see him graduate, and I wanted to keep up with him, and I wanted to go to his wedding and, see his kids, because he wrote about that. He was in my writing class, and he emerged as this beautiful writer, and everyone really liked him, and even his enemies loved him.
How has this whole tragedy changed you?
I've come to realize that you're not guaranteed anything forever. You have to take your life day by day and tell the people that you love them, because you never know.
I wake up sometimes in the morning and I've been crying all night. And we are definitely changed. We're not the same people that we were. I don't think I'll ever be the person that I was before that day.
I realize how important it is to stay connected to everyone, and life's short, and that you should make it count and try to get out more and spend more time with my classmates from room 1213, and I guess realize that I should get to know people more closely.
It's so hard to think properly and straight again. And every time I think by myself, I'm having those flashbacks, and I'm thinking and I'm seeing this figure of death. There's more to life. There's a reason why I'm still here. I have to think of the positives.
We know that Gina would not want us to be totally miserable and not having a life. We just try and move on, try and move through every day as best we can.
If you had all the victims in one room, what would you tell them?
And I can't even pretend to imagine the pain that you're going through. I just can't. And I think every single day, and I just feel so sad all the time, but I just want you to know that I love all 17 of them, and I will never, ever forget them. They're in my thoughts every single day, and so are you.
I'm sorry for the incompetence that occurred and the negligence and the not doing what they should have done prior to all this, and all the things that is coming out now in reference to how this could have been prevented.
It shouldn't have happened. You sent them off to school. You didn't send them off to war. You didn't send them off to a danger zone. They went to school. Who thinks their kid's gonna go to school and not come home from school?
Six minutes and about 20 seconds. In a little over 6 minutes, 17 of our friends were taken from us, 15 were injured, and everyone, absolutely everyone, in the Douglas community was forever altered. Everyone who was there understands. Everyone who has been touched by the cold grip of gun violence understands. For us, long, tearful, chaotic hours in the scorching afternoon sun were spent not knowing. No one understood the extent of what had happened. No one could believe that there were bodies in that building waiting to be identified for over a day. No one knew that the people who were missing had stopped breathing long before any of us had even known that a code red had been called. No one could comprehend the devastating aftermath or how far this would reach or where this would go.
We are kids in March for Our Lives. We are young people. The oldest people in our organization are 20 years old. I'm proud to know that it's mainly young people who are pushing this, but we have every generation behind us, all types of people. It's not just the young people, but the young people are the ones who are finally stepping up and finding their voice again. Because when young people get active, that's when mountains get moved.
6 minutes and 20 seconds with an AR-15, and my friend Carmen would never complain to me about piano practice. Aaron Feist would never call Kira Miss Sunshine. Alex Schachter would never walk into school with his brother Ryan. Scott Beagle would never joke around with Cameron at camp. Helen Ramsey would never hang out after school with Max. Gina Montalto would never wave to her friend Liam at lunch. Joaquin Oliver would never play basketball with Sam or Dylan. Elena Petty would never, Kara Lugren would never, Chris Hickson would never, Luke Hoyer would never, Marquine Duque Aguiano would never, Peter Wang would never, Alyssa Al-Hadaf would never, Jamie Guttenberg would never, Meadow Pollock would never.